So part of the magic of the early days of the Restoration was the culture of questions that the Lord was able to help them to develop. The visitations of angels, heavenly beings, are of course incredible and strengthen our testimonies. To me, the real magic of it was the culture of questions, how people were asking regularly, seeking wisdom from the Lord. So in sections 6, section 11, 12, and 14, you'll see that the answers are to some questions are the same with the 6 verses of those sections. And so there's one principle that I love to teach, and it's applicable in many different places where I teach, but it really bears repeating right here. And you might use this to frame these sections for your students contextually. And so I start with ether. We had this in Institute today, and it was such an incredible experience. So ether chapter 2. Notice verses 23 through 25. Now let's look, I'll just read through this quickly. Let's look for what questions is the Lord really asking here. The Lord said unto the brother of Jared, What will ye that I should do, that ye may have light in your vessels? For behold, ye cannot have windows, for they will be dashed in pieces. Neither shall ye take fire with you, for ye shall not go by the light of fire. For behold, ye shall be as a whale in the midst of the sea, for the mountain waves shall dash upon you. Nevertheless, I will bring you up again out of the depths of the sea. For the winds have gone forth out of my mouth, and also the rains and the floods have I sent forth. And behold, I prepare you against these things, for ye cannot cross this great deep, save I prepare you against the waves of the sea, and the winds which have gone forth, and the floods which shall come. Therefore, what will ye that I should prepare for you, that ye may have light when ye are swallowed up in the depths of the sea? So there you go. The Lord is creating a culture of questioning. He gives him the question at the beginning of verse 23 and at the end of verse 25, What will ye that I should do, that ye may have light in your vessels? Or, what will ye that I should prepare for you, that ye may have light when ye are swallowed up in the depths of the sea? And then he packs all these things in there for the brother of Jared really to be thinking about, so that he really gets the importance of having light. He's going to need it. But he asked him a question. Now, if you didn't understand who the Lord was, if somebody just read this without any context, it might seem like the person who is asking the question has no idea how to solve the problem. They're saying, look, you've got this problem. What am I supposed to do? Like God doesn't know, and he's going and asking this mortal, what do you think I should do? That's not it. Again, he knows exactly what he could do, the various ways perhaps that he could solve it, but he's asking the brother of Jared, what do you think should happen? Here's the problems, but be asking yourself this question. He's creating a culture of questions and letting him know it's okay to ask me what you think that I should do. It's okay to request of me to do things. Now, this cross-references beautifully with Genesis 6. If you're not familiar with this, you should pause and turn there, because this will be great to write it and cross-reference it for yourself. But when we look at Genesis 6, verse 16, what we have in Genesis 6 is the narrative of Noah and the flood. Well, the brother of Jared and his families are coming from the Tower of Babel, which is just after the time of Noah and the flood. So, and there's some suggestion maybe, if you do the numbers in a certain way, that Noah could have even been alive maybe towards the end of this or while the tower is being built. So we know that the brother of Jared and all the people would have known really well about Noah. And it's a similar story, right? He needs to have a boat to escape or to progress. So notice as the Lord's giving Noah instructions in verse 16 of Genesis 6, he says, A window shalt thou make to the ark, and in a cubit shalt thou finish it above. He tells Noah to make a window here, but tells the brother of Jared, look, you can't have windows. They'll be dashed in pieces with all the storm and rain. It seems to be contradictory, except this is probably in Genesis. It's the King James scholars who have translated. If you look in the footnote for window in Genesis 16 or 6:16, what you see is it says the word for window is a Hebrew word, sohar. Some rabbis believed it was a precious stone that shone in the ark. So you probably have this clear stone that light comes through, and maybe a King James scholar looked at that and said, "Oh, that sounds like a window, a clear stone or a clear glass that light can shine through." So he wrote window. It seemed to make sense. I think what God's doing is he's teaching the brother of Jared to have questions. You ought to ask questions and feel comfortable asking me questions. I love to answer your questions. And in the same way, but in the same moment, he's saying, but often you'll find the answer to those questions from things that have already happened, from revelations that I've already given, from things you're well familiar with. So he wants us to ask questions and then turn to divine sources or divinely appointed sources to find them. Now, I think that's what's happening, at least in part, with section 6, section 11. So 6 to Oliver Cowdery, 11 to Hiram Smith, 12 to Joseph Knight Sr., and then, of course, section 14. Each of these, with the Whitmers, each of these are going to have essentially the same first 6 verses. And each of them is asking, hey, what can I do to help in the restoration of the gospel? They're asking this question. Now remember this, and I think it's an important principle really for students to have sink deeply in their minds and their hearts. It's that if something has already been answered or revealed generally, revelation has come generally about this question, meaning to everybody, it's already written down, then God doesn't need to send another angel or another special revelation with completely different language to answer it for us individually. We have the opportunity to turn to the scriptures and the words of the prophets. So here we have that. Each of them has this question, or coming to Joseph in these different ways saying, hey, how can I help? And God can just reveal the same thing he's already revealed. And they can get their questions answered. This to me is extremely exciting because it helps me to know if I'll create a culture of questions between me and the Lord and in my life. And I think, by the way, the times in which we live, this is a wide open opportunity for our youth. They're being encouraged both in the secular world and their schooling and also in the church to ask questions, ask the deep and probing questions. So if they'll create a culture of questions in the relationship between them and the Lord, then they can be confident that they won't need a special revelation if those questions have already been answered. They can turn to the sources that have already been given. They can be confident in that. Now, if it hasn't been answered, they can anticipate at some point receiving a revelation or communication from God. As long as they continue to nurture that relationship, they can receive those answers, and certainly they can anticipate that if they're sincere questions and they're ones that need answered, that the Lord will reveal it through his servants, the prophets. Thanks. Have a wonderful time teaching these sections of the Doctrine and Covenants. I sure love them.